That was the chairman of EFCC, Mr. Abdulrasheed Bawa, and that 85% he referred to is what the CBN governor put at 2.7 trillion naira that is outside the banking system in Nigeria, according to the CBN governor. This is an indication of the size of informal structure when we talk about the economy of Nigeria. Now, what are some of the consequences of having a large part of the economy unstructured or informal? I know that's not news. We've heard that quite a lot of time. What are the opportunities inherent in there? What strategy can be used to optimize those opportunities? That's what we have Mr. Uchenna Uzo, Director, Africa Retail Academy, joining us virtually to discuss. Good morning, Mr. Uzo. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, Ini. It's a pleasure to be with you again here on Channels Television today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us also. So tell us, Mr. Uzo, we keep hearing Nigeria is largely unstructured, informal, the informal sector is higher, and that's why we see policies not not the impact of policies not streaming down as much as we would have loved to, or as much as we see in other countries. We can't, the economy cannot really be predicted. No, the element of certainty has been taken away because you have a lot or huge part of the economy unstructured. Tell us, how big from your findings is this unstructured part of the Nigerian economy?
Well, it's really huge. It's really enormous. I mean, if we go by the statistics, starting with Africa, 70% of Africa's workforce is in the informal sector, and 80% of Nigeria's workforce is in the informal sector. And in fact, over 90% of retailing activity in Nigeria operates in the informal sector space. And in fact, if you look at one of the common ways of informal business activity in Nigeria, which is street vending, it's estimated that over 2 billion naira exchanges hands in cash daily through the street vending channel. So it is a huge channel, and it's really largely untapped, mainly because people don't understand how it survives and how it works. And the interesting thing about this channel, which really makes it this huge, is the fact that it is where you find the largest base of customers. It's also the distribution backbone of the economy. And it is the place where product and price testing happens. And this is why it is as large as it is.
So does this perspective you have shared, does it support what the CBN governor has said, that you have a lot, about 2.7 trillion naira outside the banking system? Is that what is being controlled or handled by the members of this informal sector?
Yes, I would say largely it is. And I think that it really presents an opportunity rather than a challenge for us. Because if we can harness the power of that largely untapped segment, it can really have and contribute greatly to economic development. And that's why a mindset shift is required to understand really how to decode this unstructured or informal market, which is really what is dominating how business gets done in the economy.
So please share with us, what should be the strategy? I know we're going to have redesigned notes, and maybe that might be one strategy to bring the informal sector into the system. But what, from your perspective, would be a working strategy to harness the opportunities that lie in that area?
Okay, so I think to begin with, we need a mindset shift, as I had said, to begin with a reorientation. So there are a couple of should we say, mistaken notions about informal or unstructured markets. One is people tend to believe that this is a largely illegal market. And because of that, it's believed that one shouldn't do much business with them. But that isn't the case. Of course, there are illegal or shadow operators in that market, but the large majority of people who dominate that market do legal businesses and are actually tax paying. Some statistics show that 90% of those that operate in Nigeria's informal sector pay one form of tax or the other. And the other interesting thing is there's this preconceived notion that people in this sector lack business acumen and that they are a somewhat homogeneous group, which isn't actually the case. There's a lot of heterogeneity, there's a lot of business potential, and therefore to tap into that market, there are a couple of things that are important. I think that the first thing is really for anybody operating in this space to try to put structure within what is seemingly unstructured. That could be done by policy advocacy, that could be done by educating stakeholders in that sector, that could be done by opportunity enablement through the use of technology, which we find operating in the fintech and banking sector at the moment. But beyond that, it's also about understanding why consumers choose to buy in this market and what really makes the market strong. Trust building is important. So earning the trust of the market, earning the trust of the retailers and distributors, understanding how distribution works and how the power play political networks that operate in the informal sector play. But overall, it's about a change in mindset and about educating before litigating and thinking that everybody that operates there is doing things illegally.
So who is supposed to take a lead in this, using this strategy, getting the education to the unstructured? I mean, let's even be more realistic. Who are they? Who are they? You said they pay taxes and they are not illegal. It's not that they're doing illegal businesses. They pay taxes. They're supposed to be responsible members of the society. Who are these people we call members of the unstructured or informal part of the Nigerian economy?
So it's very good that you asked this question, and I'll give you some examples because my interest in the informal economy started with, believe it or not, the Nigerian movie industry, which I have watched closely and studied for the last 12 years. A lot of practices in the movie industry are somewhat informal in nature and yet not illegal. You may also want to look at Computer Village. You may want to look at Aspamda, the automobile versus the other forms of product cluster markets that we have. You may want to look at the food retail sector of Nigeria, and also the interesting thing that in the fast-moving consumer goods sector of our market, close to 80% of sales that come from distribution actually pass through these informal sector markets. And so they are a strong force. And then if you ask, who is going to be responsible for this change, for this development, it really needs to tap from the regulatory standpoint, from the government standpoint, to basically redefine what the informal sector means, to have a policy framework, especially a retail policy framework, that would make it possible for those operating in this sector to have a more enabling environment, to have also tax rebates and regimes that allow them to also look at pensions. So it's interesting that PENCOM is working in that direction to see how to bring in more people who operate in the informal sector into the pensions regime. But apart from that, also public and private sector partnerships are important for making this work, because the informal sector is everywhere and it's not something we can run away from, but it's rather something we need to think about how to integrate, how to synergize, how to use technology to uplift and to help those who operate in this sector.
Sounds like a long-term assignment. Are there short-term, we can have some milestone and say maybe in the next couple of years, if we do this, we could at least mop up a part of the informal sector and put them in the structured and then move to the next stage?
Well, I would say the one of policy development isn't so long-term. it's really about having a think tank group. And the African Retail Academy is already putting some structure in that place to help to champion retail policy development in Nigeria and then later on, outside of Nigeria. It is also about really having some partnerships, small-scale partnerships that can help, and it's about testing before we scale, because to be honest, it is so huge that we can't have a massive rollout at the moment. We need to be able to test across particular sectors, see what works, and then scale. But technology also is one thing that can help us scale very well. And I must say again that the fintechs and also a lot of e-commerce kinds of arrangements could help us formalize as we move on.
Yeah, and you mentioned that they do pay taxes. We know, for instance, if you talk about the retail, the women in the markets, they do pay taxes. Yep. But the question is, where do their taxes end up? Do they end up where they're supposed to end up? We see the government aggressively looking for how to increase tax, expand the tax nets and all of that. Are they part of it, or they have been left out and then they are paying taxes but to the wrong or through the wrong channels?
Well, I would say that if the taxes they were paying were being utilized for retail development and to create an enabling environment, perhaps we wouldn't be so much where we are. So I wouldn't say that all of what is being paid, at least from the impact perspective, can we say is really being plowed back into improving the operations, retail operations and informal sector operations. So clearly, I think that there's need to differentiate, and there's need to really rethink how to apply those taxes that are being paid, and perhaps, as I had said, tax rebates, tax reform, basically to enable these people scale. The other interesting thing, by the way, is that, as you know, I think that the SMEs, the small and medium scale enterprises in Nigeria, contribute up to about 50% of Nigeria's GDP. And it's also interesting to note that about 65% of that comes from informal sector operators, who are there. And so there's actually room, by supporting these SMEs with the right enablement, to do more in this sector.
Yeah, and one of the strengths of Nigeria is its population, and there lies the markets we boast about. But it remains to be seen if we're really making the most of the markets that we have, or if that market is being exploited, especially by foreigners. What can we do to really feel the impact of these huge markets that Nigeria has when we're talking about retail, especially?
Okay. So from the point of view of retail, I think what we can do is, first of all, to know that just because our market is huge doesn't mean that we should be complacent. As you rightly mentioned, the world around us is closely looking at Nigeria as the largest economy and the largest consumer market in Africa. And they are going to come in and they are going to take advantage. And we can't really stop that unless we up our game, unless we try to redefine our operations, we try to be innovative in terms of our product and service offerings, and then we capitalize on the local opportunities that operate here. So it's really around a mindset change. That's the way I think it would go. And also understanding how consumers behave. Because it's interesting, actually, that our consumers are not going away from the informal sector markets. They do work in modern, buy from modern channels as well, but the informal market continues to stay. So understanding why and how they choose to play in this market is important.
All right, we have to thank you so much, Mr. Uchenna Uzo, Director, Africa Retail Academy, for your time this morning. And as you have said, we do hope that this will feel the impact of these huge markets that Nigeria has on the continent and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ini. This has been really wonderful. I look forward to another opportunity to do this again. Thank you.
Sure, thank you so much. All right, now, do you know that that 5,000 naira vehicle insurance policy can actually get you ₦1,000,000? Maybe you did, but have you used it before? Well, join us after the break for that conversation. This is Business Morning on Channels Television.